Coeluromorphs, or sharks, are some of the most diverse and successful species of cartilaginous fish. With a lineage spanning all the way back to the Devonian period, this cosmopolitan lineage has played an important role in marine ecology. Even in the present day, the Holocene, sharks have taken on a very wide range of different ecological niches. Sharks are truly remarkable creatures, being one of the most basal marine predators we still have in our waters today. Over the years, numerous of encounters has been made between sharks and humans. All these encounters culminating into many different types of stories about sharks and humans interacting, and also leading these predatory fish to becoming horror icons. And boy, are shark movies as numerous as they come. Yet even when marine biologists tells us that sharks aren't monsters and that they're animals like us and they're just trying to live their life, shark movies are still very common in the horror genre as a whole. But what is the allure of having sharks as horror movie antagonists? My name is Chirk Wanting. I'm a psychic, Yorei otaku, horror fanatic, and also, despite not many people knowing this, a longtime shark lover ever since I was a young boy. I think my first really up-close and personal encounter with a shark was with a Galeophobia plagiosum, a type of bamboo shark. And honestly, I was more than ecstatic finding out that the distribution of these nocturnal sharks also included the Taiwan Strait. Sharks have always fascinated me ever since I was a toddler. Being exposed to sharks from a young age has definitely taught me to respect these magnificent oceanic predators. I never truly agreed with the stigma people have on sharks, because if anything, we're technically predators. We are vertebrates. We actually have a very common ancestor, the first ever jawed fish. I think it's really hard for people to understand it, but sharks aren't monsters. They're like us. They're animals. And from one predatory species to another, you can really understand where they are coming from. As a toddler, I was actually introduced to wildlife presenters such as Jeff Cohen, Nigel Marvin, Steve Irwin, and loads more. Yet as a descendant from a long line of terrestrial vertebrates, something primal within me just clicked whenever I'm watching shark movies, which is why I tend to enjoy watching them. Movies and books like Jaws, although very detrimental to the welfare and conservation for sharks, it's definitely my idea for comfort horror movies. This video has been a long time coming for me, and in this regard, we're gonna explore exactly what makes shark movies so alluring for a lot of people, especially me. Galeophobia, the primal fear of sharks, and the namesake for my shark movie review series. This condition causes a lot of people to collapse in fear upon seeing a shark. Media companies just loves to use this particular condition as an excuse to fearmonger sharks. As a horror fanatic, I exhibit the sensation-seeking trait. This rush is the most satisfying for me whenever it comes to watching horror movies, triggering the oh-so-primal fight-or-flight response, synonymous with every single organism in the animal kingdom. This psychological urge to relive the stress and fear of actually being in a threatening situation but in a controlled environment, to trigger that aspect of your biology is extremely therapeutic in a way. It really puts you in perspective of how adapted we animals really are. When it comes to shark movies, they really play on the fact that the mere presence of the shark alone is enough to send us into that state of anxiety. When you're in the state of fight or flight, natural selection actually favors the ones that get away, which is why normally you would run from a threat. Shark attacks are rare, even though there is at least 300 recorded cases of shark attacks. And the rare case a shark does actually attack a human is typically attributed to misidentification on the shark's end. If so, then why do shark movies portray sharks actively predating on humans? What could explain the fact that we have this primal fear of sharks, even though it's now known that sharks don't really hunt people? We now turn to the paleontological record. Enter Tiktaalik, the ancestor of pretty much every single terrestrial vertebrate on this planet. occurring in the late Devonian, at least 375 million years ago. Well, during that time, we, as I'll be referring to the Tiktaalics, considering they were our ancestors, we would have been eaten by eugenodons and other prehistoric sharks at the time. This shows that in this ecosystem, this Devonian ecosystem, we weren't top predator. Sharks were also not really on the top of the trophic scale, considering there are placoderms like Dunkleosteus. To be fair, it will make a lot more sense if our fear of sharks actually comes from a more hereditary reason. We animals have the tendency to actually avoid a certain animal which is a little higher on the trophic scale. Alright, while making this video, I actually found out that in Beijing, China, the paleontologists there discovered a shark that was dated to 439 million years ago. The shark known as Fanjingshana, an armored shark which turns out to be the ancestor of Tiktaalik and other lobe-finned fishes. By extension, ancestors of all terrestrial life on Earth, including us humans. It's honestly really fucking cool to think about, because of how related we are in terms of phylogenetics. Knowing this, knowing just how much we living organisms have to go through, how much we've been through already, it's really amazing to think that, yes, we are related to one another. But at the same time, we animals are genetically programmed to fear our predators. In this specific case, even after the extinction of the Malagasy crowned eagle, lemurs still actually exhibit the predatory avoidance behavior. But this would probably explain why we are afraid of sharks, because of generations of sharks actually eating our ancestors. The trauma may have actually been passed down to us from back in the Devonian. Maybe that would probably explain why we're so drawn to the shark movies. It might have reawakened something that was locked deep within us. The choice of having humans get eaten by sharks could be a stand-in for Tiktaalik in this regard. As far as I'm concerned, rogue sharks will always remain in sailors' folktales. Reiterating what marine biologists said time and time again, sharks aren't monsters, they're animals like us. If our fear of sharks actually stems from supernormal stimuli, that will probably make sense in this regard, but still. Introduction of the Jaws franchise was not only the greatest cinematic masterpiece ever created, but also the biggest detriment to shark conservation. Most of these shark movies focuses on the lamniforms, which are the mackerel sharks, a prehistoric lineage of sharks which are still alive today, evolving in the Mesozoic era, more specifically the Jurassic period, as shown with this fossilized Paleocarcharis, along with their peers, the Hexanchiforms. What was really impressive about these sharks is that despite being a blip in terms of shark evolution, where sharks have evolved into many diverse forms, with hybotiforms evolving in the Paleozoic, they've been relatively successful elasmobrachy fish. In fact, it turns out that elasmobrachy fish were by far the most successful chondrichthyan fish. But lamniforms in the Cretaceous period, oh, they really took off, with species like Cretotus, Cardabiodon, Leptostyrex, Squalocorax, Cretoxorina. These sharks were behemoths, especially during the Cretaceous period. But it was Cretolamna and its descendants that really took it a step further. Because as small as Cretolamna might seem in the Cretaceous period, this shark was actually an otodontid, a megatooth shark. Cretolamna will later evolve to Otodus ubiquus during the Paleocene. Then came Otodus auriculatus, later followed by Otodus augustidens, which then went on to become Otodus chubutensis, and finally, from the Miocene all the way to the Pliocene, Otodus megalodon. There was also Otodus sokolovi, which was actually the transition between Otodus articulatus and Otodus augustidens. What is so fucking remarkable about the megatooth sharks is that when they are juveniles, their teeth looks exactly like their ancestors. Knowing this, you can look at a pup of Otodus megalodon and you can trace their lineage all the way back to the Cretaceous period with Cretolamna, bringing it full circle. And based on results from isotope analysis, it would seem that the Cenozoic otodontids were extremely high on the trophic scale. It's amazing to think that our prehistoric oceans were even able to support an ecosystem with some of the most remarkable macro predators ever to live. on this planet. It shows that the otodontids, especially Ototus, were able to replace Cretoxorhina and taking on their niche. In the Cretaceous period, large fish like Xiphactinus would have been on Cretoxorhina's menu. But Cretoxorhina is also known for taking on big game like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs. Cretoxorhina has also been known to feast on pterosaurs like Pteranodon, judging by the fact that there is literally a Cretoxorhina tooth embedded in this particular Pteranodon vertebra. Megatooth sharks like Ototus megalodon would have had a similar niche. They would be feasting on large fish like Cretoxorhina, and just like Cretoxorhina, they would have eaten the large marine fauna during this period in time, Cetians. And this, we have fossil evidence for this behavior as well. Paleontologists in Calvert Cliff, Maryland has recently found a 15 million year old whale vertebra. The particular specimen we're talking about is the Miocene whale vertebra, designated as CMMV 10108, featuring a major shear fracture, which greatly compressed or telescoped the centrum. The whale seems to be suffering from spondyloarthritis and a hematoma. Paleontologists also found a megalodon tooth, which was designated as CMMV8522. The tip of the crown of this tooth was chipped off. What's truly remarkable is that the remains of both V8522 and V10108 were found in the exact same place. It was highly likely that V8522 was actually the one who inflicted that shear compression fracture. And this isn't even the only incident. There was another form about a paleontologist who actually collected a Mammilodon fossil in Ball Beach, Melbourne, Australia. There also seems to be two grooves on the metacarpal of the whale, which looked like a V-shaped chevron, which is extremely characteristic for shark tooth bite marks. So Erich Fitzgerald, I hope I'm pronouncing this guy's name right, pulled out a tooth of an Ototus augustidens and placed it on the groove in the metacarpal, and it turns out to be a perfect fit. Ototus was the last of the extremely large macropredatory sharks. It would seem that these sharks were primarily designed to hunt more larger game than previously thought. The more and more I think about it, the more I can relate the Marcarodont felines to the otodontid sharks, representing the land and sea in completely different timelines from one another, filling a niche that would probably never ever be filled again. For as humans, it was Homo neanderthalis that took on the megafauna up close and personal, while in some rare cases, mako sharks have been known to actually hunt marlin and sailfish. It was a far cry to the prehistoric sharks of old. Recently in 2020, a Carcharodon carcharis by the name of Helen managed to drown a 32-foot humpback whale. The reason why people are so hyped about it is because Helen made history. It has been 2.6 million years since a lamniform shark has successfully hunted and killed a whale. Carcharodon carcharis has been known to actually scavenge on whale carcasses. But for Helen to actively hunt a whale, that is something new. Helen's forefathers would have actually coexisted with Megalodon. In fact, the species named Carcharis is one of the last of the Carcharodon genus, some of the largest being Carcharodon plicatilis. Carcharodon might have branched out from the mako sharks, more specifically Aeschyrolamna inflicta. Carcharodon also might have actually overlapped their niche with Ototus megalodon. Paleontologists also noticed a drop in the trophic levels of Ototus megalodon during the Pliocene, having to compete with Carcharodon carcharis. The Atlantic population of Ototus megalodon would have had to switch to a lower trophic position considering their main source of food. Prehistoric Mystices whales would have actually grown to larger sizes and moving up north where the glaciers are advancing. Pliocene age Ototus megalodons might have actually chosen to switch to a more lower trophic position, overlapping niche with Carcharodon carcharis, who was more adapted to this type of lifestyle. Ultimately, it was a combination of the arrival of our most recent glacial maximum. The cooling waters during that period in time might have caused Megalodon to be unable to get to where the whales were, causing them to switch niche, considering they are generalists, although this put them in direct competition with Carcharodon. As the former was outcompeted by the latter, so ends the largest macropredatory shark ever to live, marking the end of the dynasty of otodontid sharks. Otodus megalodon will eventually get a nod in the movie Jaws, as in one scene Chief Brody picked up "Let's Go Fossil Shark Tooth Hunting" featuring the titular megalodon jaw. While perpetuating the stereotype that sharks are mindless killers, Jaws did make a very good impression on a lot of people. Jaws ushered in an age of shark movies, a subgenre of horror movies using sharks as antagonists. And this is where I will take my series now, to the incredibly diverse rabbit hole that is shark movies. Now let's just see which shark movie is worthy enough to get a full video on. No, you can't make me! You can't make me!
You can't make me! You can't make me! You can't make me!
There is no way in fucking hell I'm ever touching Sharknado. Don't even think about it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video where I basically look at what makes shark movies so alluring and why it is kind of my comfort horror movie genre. I'm sure you guys are realizing what a waste of time this video is, because honestly the answer is still inconclusive. This video was another way of me voicing out my appreciation for sharks and other elasmobrachy fish. While I might be knowledgeable about sharks to some degree, I'm no expert. I don't have a degree in marine biology. I mean, I do pay attention to marine biology, and I do actually get up to date with all the scientific papers that are published about sharks. But if you want actual and up-to-date information about the sharks, especially in the Holocene currently, I'll have to refer you to SharkBites, who actually has the credentials to actually give credible information about sharks. As a matter of fact, I actually tagged SharkBites on this video because I was hoping he would actually come on and actually do a reaction video, because I feel like a lot of stuff I said might be considered misinformation, or I might have misinterpreted some of the scientific papers I actually mentioned in this video. Anyways, to my 77 subscribers out there, yeah, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm Trick One Ting, keep venturing to the unknown, signing the fuck off.